My brother turned 30, and I showed up at his party with a gift I'd spent weeks hunting down, a vintage watch. The same kind our grandfather used to wear. You can't find these in stores anymore. You have to dig through estate sales and old antique shops, and I did, because I thought it would mean something to him. Kyle held the watch up, squinted at it like it was moldy bread, and said, "What the hell is this? Did you pull this out of a dumpster? This is cheap, worthless trash." He didn't just set the watch down, he threw it. It bounced off my chest and hit the floor. The crystal cracked. People gasped. A few laughed, probably because they didn't know what else to do. My parents stood right there next to him. Didn't say a word. My mum actually smiled. My dad shrugged, like Kyle had just pointed out the weather. I didn't yell. Didn't pick up the watch. I just pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and cancelled every transfer I'd been sending to Kyle Morrison. Then I looked at my brother, his smug face, his designer clothes, which, by the way, I'd paid for, the Rolex I bought him last Christmas, and I said, "Enjoy the house while you can. You've got about 30 days. He laughed. Everyone laughed. They thought I was kidding. Right up until the bank called 3 days later because the mortgage payment bounced. The BMW dealer sent a repossession notice. In 30 days, everything I'd been paying for 8 years, worth just vanished. That's when my grandfather showed up with some documents. They explained why my parents always stood by Kyle, why they let him treat me like garbage, why they smiled when he threw my gift in my face. Turns out I was never really their son at all. Honestly, I should have seen it coming. The insult, I mean. Kyle had been working up to it for years. Every time I tried to be a decent brother, every gift, every favorite was always a joke to him. But let me rewind. To really get what happened at that party, you have to understand what it's like to spend 38 years playing second string in your own family, to bankroll a brother who despises you, to stand by while your parents watch and do nothing. I'm Nathan Morrison. I'm 38. For 8 years. I paid for my younger brother's entire life while he acted like I was just the hired help. And that day, I hit my limit. The morning of Kyle's party started like any other Saturday. Woke up in my Denver apartment, made some coffee, checked my phone. There was Kyle's usual text. "When are you getting here?" Not because he missed me. He just wanted to make sure I was bringing a gift, something expensive he could show off. Proof his older brother had money. I'd found the watch 3 weeks before. I'd been searching for months. Our grandfather wore one just like it, a 1960s Omega Seamaster. Nothing flashy, just a beautiful piece of craftsmanship. I had it restored. New band, cleaned movement, polished case. $3,000 by the time I was done. Not because it was worth that much, but because I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted Kyle to get that this was about family, not money. I drove over round 2. Kyle's house in Cherry Creek, the nice part of town. The mortgage. I'd been paying it for 3 years. Kyle bought the place at 27, fresh from another failed business idea. No job, no income, but convinced he needed a fancy address. The bank laughed at his loan application, so I co-signed. Put down 20%. Paid the first year so he could get on his feet. 3 years later, I was still paying $3,200 a month. 36 months. $115,000. But who's counting? Me. I counted everything. Not because I expected him to pay me back, but because I work in finance. I'm a portfolio manager. Numbers are my thing, and Kyle's numbers were brutal. When I got there, the party was already in full swing. 50 people in his backyard. Catered food, open bar, live band, the whole thing probably cost $15,000. The kind of party Kyle couldn't afford. The kind I paid for because my mum called, crying. It's his 30th, Nathan. It needs to be special. You know Kyle's having a hard time right now with the business and everything. Could you help? Could I help? That's the question I've gotten my whole adult life. Could I help with his rent, his car payment, his business, his credit card debt? Could I help? Always could. Never would, which would have meant I had a choice. Asterisk just could I, which implied ability and therefore obligation. I had the ability, therefore I had the obligation. That was the family meth. I walked through Kyle's house, the house I was paying for, and out to the backyard where everyone was celebrating. My mother saw me first. Nathan, you made it. She hugged me the way you'd hug a distant cousin at a reunion. Brief, pre-funct. Then immediately, did you bring Kyle's gift? He's been asking about it. Not, how are you? Not so good to see you. Just, did you bring the gift? I held up the wrapped box. Elegant paper. Perfect bow. My mother smiled. Good. He's been excited. Excited. My brother had been excited to see what expensive thing I'd bought him this year. What item he could show off. What proof of my generosity or guilt or obligation I'd brought. My father appeared, shook my hand, asked about work. I told him about a recent deal I'd closed, a big one, the kind that came with a substantial bonus. His eyes lit up. That's great, son. Really great. Kyle mentioned he's looking at expanding his business. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you about investment opportunities. Of course, my success was only relevant in terms of what it could do for Kyle. How my bonus could fund his next failed venture. How my career wins could become his opportunities. That was always how it worked. Kyle was holding court in the center of the backyard, surrounded by friends, telling some story that had everyone laughing. He looked good, successful, the kind of 30-year-old who had it all figured out. Designer clothes, perfect hair, that confident smile. Everything about him screamed success. Everything except the reality, which was that he was broke. Had been broke for 5 years, since his last business failed, since the business before that failed, since every venture he tried had failed because Kyle was great at looking successful and terrible at actually being successful. But that didn't matter because I was there to catch him every time he fell, to fund the lifestyle, to pay the bills, to make sure he could keep up appearances. And I'd been doing it so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to say no. People were eating when my mother announced it was time for gifts. Everyone gathered around Kyle, a pile of presents on the table, expensive bottles of liquor, electronics, gift cards. The kind of presents you give someone turning 30 who seems to have everything. Kay opened them one by one, making jokes, thanking people, playing the gracious host. Then he got to mine, the last one, the one with the elegant paper and perfect bow. He picked it up, heavier than expected. He shook it slightly. What did Big Brother get me this year? He said, grinning. People laughed like it was a running joke. What would rich Nathan give his brother? What expensive thing would prove Nathan cared? I should have known then. Should have seen it in his tone. Should have realized this wasn't going to go well. But I was hopeful. Stupidly, desperately hopeful that this time would be different. That this time Kyle would see the thought I'd put in. That this time he'd appreciate something beyond the price tag. He tore off the paper, opened the box, pulled out the watch, the vintage Omega. The one I'd hunted for, had restored, had spent $3,000 and countless hours making perfect. He held it up to the light, squinted at it. The smile faded from his face. "What the hell is this?" he said. Not to me, to the crowd, like he was asking them to weigh in on what I'd done wrong. "Is this some kind of joke?" I stepped forward. "It's a 1960s Omega Seamaster, like the one Grandpa used to wear. I had it restored. Thought you'd cut me off. You thought I'd want some old piece of junk. What am I supposed to do with this?" "I have a Rolex, Nathan. You bought it for me last year, remember? Why would I want this cheap, worthless trash?" The backyard went quiet. People staring, some uncomfortable, some curious to see where this was going. I kept my voice calm. "It's not trash, Kyle. It's a vintage piece. It has history." Meaning, I thought he cut me off again. "You thought wrong." Then he threw it and me underhanded toss like he was throwing away garbage. The watch hit my chest. I didn't catch it. Just let it fall to the ground. The sound of crystal cracking against concrete was loud in the silence. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to say something, anything, to tell Kyle he was out of line. That you don't throw gifts. That you don't insult someone who's been supporting you for years. My mother was smiling, actually smiling, like Kyle had just done something amusing. My father shrugged, turned away, reached for his drink. Kyle's friends were laughing now. Nervous laughter, but laughter. And Kyle was basking in it, in the attention. In the moment where he'd embarrassed me in front of 50 people and nobody had stopped him. I bent down, picked up the watch. The crystal was cracked. The restoration ruined. Just could I, which implied ability, and therefore obligation. I had the ability, therefore I had the obligation. That was the family myth. I walked through Kyle's house, the house I was paying for, and out to the backyard where everyone was celebrating. My mother saw me first. "Nathan, you made it." She hugged me the way you'd hug a distant cousin at a reunion. Brief. Then, immediately, "Did you bring Kyle's gift? He's been asking about it. Not how are you? Not so good to see you. Just, did you bring the gift?" I held up the wrapped box. Elegant paper. Perfect bow. My mother smiled. "Good. He's been excited." Excited my brother had been excited to see. What expensive thing I'd bought him this year. What item he could show off. What proof of my generosity or guilt or obligation I'd brought. My father appeared, shook my hand, asked about work. I told him about a recent deal I'd closed, a big one, the kind that came with a substantial bonus. His eyes lit up. "That's great, son. Really great. Kyle mentioned he's looking at expanding his business. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you about investment opportunities." Of course, my success was only relevant in terms of what it could do for Kyle. How my bonus could fund his next failed venture. How my career wins could become his opportunities. That was always how it worked. Kyle was holding court in the center of the backyard, surrounded by friends, telling some story that had everyone laughing. He looked good, successful, the kind of 30-year-old who had it all figured out. Designer clothes, perfect hair, that confident smile. Everything about him screamed success. Everything except the reality, which was that he was broke. Had been broke for 5 years. Since his last business failed. Since the business before that failed. Since every venture he tried had failed because Kyle was great at looking successful and terrible at actually being successful. But that didn't matter because I was there to catch him every time he fell. To fund the lifestyle, to pay the bills, to make sure he could keep up appearances. And I'd been doing it so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to say no. People were eating when my mother announced it was time for gifts. Everyone gathered around Kyle. A pile of presents on the table, expensive bottles of liquor, electronics, gift cards. The kind of presents you give someone turning 30 who seems to have everything. Kay opened them one by one, making jokes, thanking people, playing the gracious host. Then he got to mine, the last one, the one with the elegant paper and perfect bow. He picked it up, heavier than expected. He shook it slightly. "What did Big Brother get me this year?" he said, grinning. People laughed like it was a running joke. What would rich Nathan give his brother? What expensive thing would prove Nathan cared? I should have known then, should have seen it in his tone. Should have realized this wasn't going to go well. But I was hopeful. Stupidly, desperately hopeful that this time would be different. That this time Kyle would see the thought I'd put in. That this time he'd appreciate something beyond the price tag. He tore off the paper, opened the box, pulled out the watch, the vintage Omega. The one I'd hunted for, had restored, had spent $3,000 and countless hours making perfect. He held it up to the light, squinted at it. The smile faded from his face. "What the hell is this?" he said. Not to me, to the crowd, like he was asking them to weigh in on what I'd done wrong. "Is this some kind of joke?" I stepped forward. "It's a 1960s Omega Seam Master, like the one Grandpa used to wear. I had it restored. Thought you'd heat cut me off. You thought I'd want some old piece of junk. What am I supposed to do with this? I have a Rolex, Nathan. You bought it for me last year, remember? Why would I want this cheap, worthless trash?" The backyard went quiet. People staring, some uncomfortable, some curious to see where this was going. I kept my voice calm. "It's not trash, Kyle. It's a vintage piece. It has history." Meaning, I thought he cut me off again. "You thought wrong." Then he threw it and me underhanded toss like he was throwing away garbage. The watch hit my chest. I didn't catch it, just let it fall to the ground. The sound of crystal cracking against concrete was loud in the silence. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to say something, anything, to tell Kyle he was out of line. That you don't throw gifts. That you don't insult someone who's been supporting you for years. My mother was smiling, actually smiling, like Kyle had just done something amusing. My father shrugged, turned away, reached for his drink. Kyle's friends were laughing now. Nervous laughter, but laughter. And Kyle was basking in it, in the attention. In the moment where he'd embarrassed me in front of 50 people and nobody had stopped him. I bent down, picked up the watch. The crystal was cracked. The restoration ruined. Asterisk $3,000 and 3 weeks of searching. Destroyed because my brother thought it was funny to throw it on the ground. I looked at Kyle, at his smug face, at the Rolex on his wrist that I'd paid for, at the designer shirt I'd bought him, at the house behind him that I owned more of than he did, and I felt something click, not break, click, like a lock finally opening, like I'd been trying to open a door for 38 years and finally found the right key. The key was acceptance. Accepting that this was never going to change, that Kyle was never going to appreciate me, that my parents were never going to defend me, that I'd been funding my own humiliation for 8 years, and I was done. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app. 38 years of being the good son, the reliable son, the one who paid for everything and asked for nothing. I was done. I found the automatic transfer to Kyle's mortgage, cancelled it. Found the car payment for his BMW, cancelled it. Found a business account I'd set up for his latest venture, closed it. Found the credit card I'd given him for emergencies, cancelled it. Took me about 90 seconds to dismantle 8 years of support. Kyle was watching me, still smiling. Thought I was checking email or something. Didn't realize I just pulled every financial support system out from under him. I put my phone away, looked at him, at my younger brother who'd just thrown a $3,000 gift in my face and expected me to take it. "Enjoy the house while you can," I said. My voice calm. "Sodi, you've got about 30 days before the bank starts foreclosure proceedings." His smile faltered. "What?" I started walking toward the gate. "The mortgage payment. I just cancelled it, along with your car payment, your business account, your credit card, everything I've been paying for. As of right now, you're on your own." I heard him laugh behind me. That confident laugh. The one that said he thought I was bluffing. "Yeah, right. You're not serious." I turned back. "I'm completely serious. You wanted to know what I got you for your 30th birthday. Independence. Congratulations." I left, walked through his house. The house I'd paid $115,000 toward, and out to my car. Drove away while Kyle and my parents and 50 guests stood in the backyard trying to figure out if I was joking. I wasn't joking. The next morning, Sunday, my phone started ringing at 7. My mother, I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. "Nathan, we need to talk about yesterday. Kyle is very upset. He says you cancelled his mortgage payment. That can't be right. Call me back immediately." I deleted the voicemail without listening to the whole thing. My father called at 8, left a message. "Son, I don't know what happened yesterday, but we need to work this out. Kyle's mortgage is due in 3 days. You can't just leave him hanging like this. Call me." I deleted that one, too. Kyle called at 9 o'clock, then 10, then 11, left 7 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Around noon, my mother showed up at my apartment. I didn't let her in. Talked to her through the door. "Nathan, open up. We need to discuss this." I kept the door closed. There's nothing to discuss. Kyle threw my gift in my face. "You smiled." Dad shrugged. "I'm done funding his life." That's the end of the discussion. She knocked harder. "You're being ridiculous." He didn't mean anything by it. He was just joking around. You know how Kyle is. You can't punish him for having a sense of humor. A sense of humor. That's what she called throwing a $3,000 gift on the ground and calling it trash. "I'm not punishing him," I said through the door. "I'm just not paying for him anymore. There's a difference." She tried a different approach, softer. "Nathan, honey, please. He's your brother. Family helps family. You've always been so good about that. So generous. We're proud of you. But you can't just abandon Kyle like this. He needs you." I opened the door, looked at my mother, at this woman who'd raised me to believe that being the older brother meant being the ATM. That generosity was measured in dollars spent. that love was transactional. He doesn't need me, I said. He needs money. There's a difference, and I'm not giving it anymore. She started crying. Real tears. The kind she'd always been good at. How can you be so cruel? He's your brother, your baby brother, and you're going to let him lose his house, his car, his business, over a watch, over a joke. I stepped back. This isn't about the watch. This is about 38 years of being treated like my only value is my bank account, of paying for everything and getting nothing, not respect, not appreciation, not even basic courtesy. I'm done. Kyle is 30 years old. Time for him to figure out how to pay his own bills. She shifted tactics again to anger. You're being selfish. You have money, more than you need, and you're going to hoard it while your family struggles. What kind of son does that? I started closing the door. The kind of son who just realized his family only calls when they need something. Asterisk. Tell Kyle the mortgage is due Thursday. He should probably figure out how to cover it. I closed the door, locked it, stood there listening to my mother bang on it for 5 more minutes before she finally gave up and left. Monday morning, I got an email from Kyle's bank. Mortgage payment past due. Did I want to make a payment? I deleted it. Got a call from the BMW dealership. Kyle's account was 30 days past due. Did I want to bring the account current? I didn't answer. Got a text from my father. Nathan, this has gone on long enough. Kyle's mortgage bounced. The bank is charging late fees. You need to fix this. This is family. I blocked his number. Tuesday KL showed up at my office. Got past security somehow. Stormed into my office while I was in a meeting with a client. What the hell, Nathan? The bank is threatening foreclosure. The BMW place is talking about repossession. You're actually doing this over a watch. I excused myself from the meeting. Walked Kyle out to the lobby. I'm doing this because you threw my gift on the ground and called it trash. Because Mum smiled when you did it. Because Dad shrugged. Because none of you have ever treated me like anything other than a wallet with legs, and I'm done. Kyle's face was red, angry. You're being a child. Grow up. So I didn't like your gift. Big deal. You don't ruin someone's life over that. I pressed the elevator button for him. I'm not ruining your life. I'm just not funding it anymore. You're 30 years old, Kyle. Get a job. Pay your own bills. Live within your means like normal adults do. He grabbed my arm. You can't do this. That's my house, my car, my business. I pulled my arm away. No, that's my money. My house I'm paying for my car payment. I'm covering my business. I'm funding and I'm taking it all back. You're on your own now, like you've been telling me you are for years. Wednesday, the bank called Kyle directly. Foreclosure proceedings initiated. 30 days to bring the account current or vacate the property. Kay called me 17 times. Left voicemails ranging from angry to desperate to apologetic. I didn't respond. Thursday, the BMW was repossessed. Tow truck showed up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Took the car right out of Kyle's driveway. My mother called crying. Are you happy now? He has no way to get to work. How is he supposed to pay you back if he can't get to work? I almost laughed. Kay didn't have a job. Hadn't had one in 2 years. The work he needed to get to was meeting friends for lunch and pretending he had a business, but I didn't say that. Just hung up. Friday, Kyle's business account bounced 3 checks. Suppliers calling, asking what happened, threatening legal action. Kyle's friends stopped returning his calls. The ones who'd laughed at his party, who'd thought it was funny when he threw my gift. They weren't laughing now, weren't interested in being friends with someone who couldn't pay for dinner, who couldn't afford the lifestyle, who was, it turned out, completely broke. Week 2, Kyle tried showing up at my apartment every day, Monday through Friday, knocking on the door, begging me to answer, to talk, to work this out. I watched through the peephole, watched my brother spiral, losing weight, looking tired, desperate. Part of me felt bad. That part that had been programmed for 38 years to take care of him, to solve his problems, to be the good big brother who fixed everything. But another part of me, the part that had been ignored and used and dismissed for decades, that part felt nothing. Or maybe it felt free, like I've been carrying Kyle on my back, and finally set him down. My mother sent emails, long ones, explaining how I was destroying the family, how Kyle was suffering, how I was being selfish and cruel, how disappointed my grandparents would be, how I needed to fix this before it was too late. I didn't respond. My father sent shorter emails, more direct. Nathan, you've made your point. Kyle understands now. He's sorry. He'll apologize. Just restore the payments and we can move forward. I deleted them all. Kyle sent texts, hundreds of them, apologizing, explaining, blaming the alcohol, blaming stress, blaming everyone except himself, promising he'd change, promising he'd appreciate me, promising anything if I just turned the money back on. I didn't respond. Week 3, Kyle had to list the house. Couldn't make the payment. Couldn't get a loan. Bank demanded he sell or face foreclosure. The house went up for sale. Market was good. Offers came in fast, but they were lower than what Kyle owed. He was underwater on the mortgage. Would have to come up with the difference at closing. Money he didn't have. Money he wanted me to provide. I didn't. My parents tried intervention round 2. Asterisk showed up at my office together. Made it past security by claiming it was an emergency. Sat in my office with serious faces and told me this had to stop. That I was tearing the family apart. That Kyle was a mess, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Was having panic attacks about losing everything. Good, I said. They stared at me. Good, my mother repeated. Your brother is having panic attacks and you think that's good. I leaned back in my chair. Kyle has never had consequences before. For anything, every time he's failed, I've caught him. Every time he's made bad decisions, I funded the recovery. He's 30 years old and has no idea how to take care of himself because I've been doing it for him since he was 22. These panic attacks, they're called reality. He's meeting it for the first time. Yeah, I think that's good. My father slammed his hand on my desk. You're being cruel. We raised you better than this. I stood up. No, you didn't. You raised me to believe my only value was what I could provide. That being a good son meant funding Kyle's life. That love was measured in dollars spent. Well, I'm done. Kyle treated me like trash. You both watched and did nothing. So now I'm doing nothing. Seems fair. Week 4. Kyle moved out of the house. Moved in with a friend. Then got kicked out when he couldn't contribute to rent. Moved in with my parents into his childhood bedroom, 30 years old. My mother called it temporary. said he just needed time to get back on his feet. I called it inevitable, the natural consequence of never learning to stand on your own. My grandfather called me for the first time through all of this. My father's father, the one whose watchkey had thrown. "Nathan," he said, "I heard what happened. I want to talk to you, not to convince you to change your mind, just to talk." I trusted my grandfather. He'd always been different, honest, direct. Didn't play the manipulation games the rest of my family did. I agreed to meet him for breakfast Saturday morning. We met at a diner. He was already there when I arrived, looking older than I remembered, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. He hugged me long and tight. Then we sat down. I heard Kyle through the watch. He said, "The one like mine." I nodded, threw it on the ground, called it cheap trash. Mum smiled. Dad shrugged. So I pulled all his funding. My grandfather nodded slowly. "About time," he said. I looked up, surprised. "What?" He smiled sadly. "Nathan, I've watched you fund Kyle's life for 8 years. Watched you pour hundreds of thousands of dollars into someone who gave you nothing in return. Watched your parents enable it, encourage it, make you feel obligated. I've been waiting for you to say enough. I'm glad you finally did." I felt something in my chest. Relief, maybe. Validation. "Everyone else thinks I'm being cruel," I said. My grandfather shook his head. "Everyone else has been using you. There's a difference between being cruel and setting boundaries. What you're doing is healthy. What they've been doing is exploitation." We ordered breakfast, ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then he said, "There's something you should know about why your parents have always treated Kyle differently. Why they've always expected you to take care of him. Why they never defend you." I set down my fork. "I'm listening." He pulled out a manila folder, set it on the table. "Your grandmother made me promise not to tell you until you were ready, until you'd figured out you deserved better. That time is now." I opened the folder. Inside were documents, birth certificates, hospital records, letters. I pulled out the first birth certificate. Nathan Morrison, born June 12, 1987. Mother Sarah Morrison, not Linda. My mother's name was Linda. "Who's Sarah?" I asked. My grandfather took a deep breath. "Sarah was my first wife, your father's first mother. She died when your father was 5. Your grandfather on your mother's side. Linda's father, he was Sarah's brother. When Sarah died, I remarried. To your grandmother, Margaret. We had Kyle. Your father and Kyle were half-brothers, but we raised them as full brothers. Your father was 12 when Kyle was born." I stared at him. "I don't understand. What does this have to do with me?" He pulled out another document. My birth certificate. Nathan James Morrison. Born June 12, 1987. Mother Sarah Morrison, not Linda. Sarah, the woman who'd been my father's mother, who died when my father was 5. "I don't understand," I said again. "Sarah died in 1965. I was born in 1987. That's impossible." My grandfather nodded. "The certificate is a copy modified. The real one lists your mother as Margaret. My wife, your grandmother. Nathan, you're not your father's son. You're his half-brother. Margaret and I had you when she was 47. Surprise pregnancy, menopause baby. It was complicated, scandalous. We were too old. We already had an adult daughter. And here came this baby. You, The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the table. Asterisk. Asterisk. My grandfather reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Your father, Robert, was 42 when you were born, he said. He and Linda had been married 15 years, trying everything to have a kid. IVF, all of it. Nothing worked. Then you came along, a baby in the family. They asked if they could adopt you, raise you as their own. Margaret and I, we just couldn't do it anymore. We were too old. So we said yes. We gave you to them, made them promise they'd love you, raise you right, never treat you any different than a child of their own. I pulled my hand away. Wait, they adopted me. Robert and Linda adopted me. They're not my parents. He nodded. Legally, they are. They adopted you when you were 6 months old, changed your birth certificate, made it look like you'd always been theirs. But biologically, I'm your father. Margaret was your mother. Robert is your half-brother. Kyle's your nephew. I couldn't breathe. My whole life, 38 years, suddenly flipped upside down. Why didn't anyone tell me? His eyes filled with tears. Because 2 years after they adopted you, Linda got pregnant. Miracle baby, Kyle. Suddenly, they had the child they always wanted. And you became the adopted son. The placeholder. Margaret noticed right away the way they treated you, the way Kyle got everything and you got leftovers. She wanted to tell you, wanted to take you back, but we'd signed away our rights. We could only watch and hope they'd keep their promises. They didn't. I stood up. I couldn't just sit there. I needed to move. I'd spent 8 years funding my nephew, paying for his house, his car, his life, while he treated me like garbage. While my half-brother and his wife just sat back and watched, because I was adopted, because I wasn't really their son. My grandfather stood too. You are their son. They raised you. But once Kyle came, you became the adopted son. The obligation, especially for Linda. She never bonded with you. She struggled with the adoption from the start, only agreed because she thought she'd never have kids. Once Kyle was born, you were just there, the child they got stuck with. And as you got older, as you became successful, they saw you as a resource. Someone to take care of Kyle. Someone whose job was to fund the child they actually wanted. I sat back down, my head spinning. Kyle doesn't know. He shook his head. Nobody knows except Robert, Linda, and me. Margaret died thinking you'd figure it out one day, that you'd see the difference in how they treated you and Kyle and demand answers. But you were always too busy trying to earn their love, too busy trying to be the good son. So you never asked, never demanded the truth. Just kept giving, hoping they'd finally give you what they gave Kyle so easily. I stared at the stack of papers on the table. My whole life, right there lie. You're my father, I said, just to hear it out loud. Double quotes, yes, my grandfather said, crying now. And I've been a coward. I should have told you years ago. Should have fought for you. Should have stopped them from using you. I'm sorry, Nathan. I'm so sorry. We stayed in that diner for 3 hours. He told me everything about my birth. Margaret's struggle with late pregnancy. Robert and Linda's desperation for a child. The adoption that was supposed to fix everything. And then Kyle's birth, that changed it all. He told me about watching me grow up, treated like an obligation while Kyle was the golden child. About Margaret's heartbreak. About his own guilt. Your grandmother left you money, he said. When she died 5 years ago, $50,000, she put it in her will just for you. Robert was the executor. He was supposed to give it to you. Did he? I shook my head. I never got any money when Grandma died. His face hardened. He took it. Your inheritance. Used it for Kyle, probably. Just like he's done your whole life. Taken what was yours and given it to Kyle. He pulled out another paper, Margaret's will. It was clear, $50,000 to Nathan Morrison, my grandson. In trust until he turned 35. Robert Morrison, executor. I turned 35 3 years ago. I never saw a dime. Never even knew the money existed. I want to sue them, I said. My grandfather nodded. I'll help. I have everything, the adoption papers, the wills, bank records. Everything you need. We spent another hour going through documents, building a case. When we finally left the diner, I carried a box full of proof. Proof I was adopted. Proof my inheritance was stolen. Proof the people I thought were my parents had been using me my whole life. Asterisk, I drove home and sat in my apartment, surrounded by stacks of paperwork that basically rewrote my whole life. Nathan Morrison, born to Margaret and William Morrison, handed over to Robert and Linda Morrison when I was 6 months old. They raised me as their son, at least until Kyle came along. After that, I slowly faded into the background. I went from being their kid to some kind of family obligation to the guy who paid the bills for my so-called nephew. I'm 38, and I just found out I've been living someone else's story. Monday morning, I called my lawyer. I told him I needed to talk about 2 things. First, the inheritance, $50,000 I was supposed to get 3 years ago, never saw a dime of it. Second, financial exploitation. 8 years I spent funding someone else's life, all based on lies. I had documents for everything. My lawyer asked a bunch of questions, wrote it all down, said the whole thing was messy, but maybe we had a case. Give me a week, he said. He'd look over the paperwork and let me know what we could do. Tuesday, Robert showed up at my office. My half-brother, though I still couldn't really think of him that way. In my head, he was still Dad, even though he hadn't been, not for 38 years. He looked awful, like he hadn't slept in days. Nathan, please. We need to talk. I pointed to a chair. He sat down and said, Kyle is a mess. Lost the house, lost his car, lost everything. He's living with us. He can barely function. You have to stop this. I leaned back. Stop, what? I'm not doing anything. I just stopped doing everything. There's a difference. Robert ran his hands through his hair. You're being vindictive. Yes, he threw the watch. Yes, it was rude. But you don't destroy someone's life over that. You don't abandon family. Family. The word felt rotten in my mouth. Tell me about the adoption, I said. He froze, went pale. What? I pulled out the documents my grandfather gave me, birth certificates, adoption records, Margaret's will, and spread them on the desk. Tell me about how you adopted me when I was 6 months old. How you promised to treat me like your own. How you were supposed to give me $50,000 when I turned 35. Tell me about all of it. Robert stared at the paper's 38 years of secrets, right there in black and white. How did you? William told you. He didn't even ask, just knew. He told me everything. That he's my biological father, Margaret, my mother. That you and Linda adopted me. That Kyle was born 2 years later, and suddenly everything changed. That you took my inheritance and spent it on Kyle. All of it. Robert slumped in his chair. We were going to tell you when the time was right. It never seemed right. I laughed, sharp, ugly. When was that, exactly? When I was paying Kyle's mortgage. When I was funding his business. When he was throwing my gifts on the floor and you were smiling. When were you going to tell me I'd been paying for my nephew? That you weren't even my father? That I spent 38 years trying to earn love from people who saw me as a burden? He looked up, eyes red. We did love you. We do love you. It's just ... complicated. Kyle is our biological son, and you were adopted. It's different. I stood up. Get out. He didn't move. Nathan, please. I raised my voice. Get out of my office now, before I call security. He got up slowly, walked to the door, turned back. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not loving you the way we should have. For letting Kyle treat you that way. For taking the inheritance. For everything. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. Just watched him leave. Closed the door. Sat at my desk, surrounded by proof of betrayal. And honestly, I didn't feel sad or angry. I just felt free. Like I'd finally set down all the expectations I'd been dragging around for years. The lawsuit dragged on for 11 months. Robert and Linda fought it. Claimed adopting me gave them the right to do what they wanted. Said the inheritance went to family expenses, as if that included me. Claimed I gave Kyle money willingly, so calling it exploitation wasn't fair. My lawyer ripped those arguments to shreds. The will was crystal clear. The money was mine. Robert took it behind my back. That's theft. The money for Kyle, sure, I gave it voluntarily. But I thought he was my brother, and I was pressured by people I believed were my parents. Plus, I was a minor when adopted. They'd promised to treat me equally and broke that promise. That counted for something. We settled out of court. Robert and Linda agreed to pay back the inheritance $50,000 plus interest, which brought it up to $73,000. They also had to pay restitution for exploiting me, $200,000. Based on what I'd paid Kyle compared to what a reasonable family member would have done. Total, $273,000. They had to sell the house I grew up in, where Kyle was still living in his old bedroom. They moved to a small apartment. Kyle had to move out, too, into some studio he could barely afford. He got a job in retail really, that's all he was fit for. It was his first job in 3 years. I took the settlement, split it in half. One part went to my grandfather, William, my real father, if I'm honest, for raising me as best he could, even from a distance. I told him so. Thanked him for telling me the truth when everyone else lied, for keeping Margaret's papers safe, for being the parent I never really had. He cried when I handed him the check and told me he didn't deserve it. I told him he deserved more. The other half I donated. I started a foundation for adopted kids, ones getting treated like outsiders in their own families. Kids who were just being used. They needed to know they deserved better too. I called it the Margaret Morrison Foundation, after my mother. She gave birth to me at 47 and watched from the sidelines while Robert and Linda broke every promise. Left me money they stole, wanted better for me but couldn't give it. I'm 39 now. It's been a year since Kyle smashed my watch. A year since I cut off every penny of support. A year since my life blew up and settled into something honest for once. I haven't talked to Robert or Linda since the settlement. They're still around, living small lives. Probably telling people some story where I'm the bad guy, the ungrateful adopted kid who sued his family. I don't care. They're not my family. They're just the people who took me in and then spent nearly 4 decades making me pay for it. Kyle emailed me 6 months back. Subject: I'm sorry. I almost didn't open it, but I did. He wrote, Nathan, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm sorry for throwing your watch, for treating you like an ATM, for taking and never giving, for being a spoiled jerk for 30 years. You were a good brother, the best end I took advantage. I'm working now at a retail store. It's humbling. I make minimum wage, live in a studio, barely cover rent, but I'm doing it myself. For the first time, I'm actually taking care of myself. It's harder than I ever thought. I had no idea how much you did, how much you gave up. I get it now. I'm sorry it took losing everything to figure it out. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry, and I'm trying to be better. To be someone who deserves a brother like you. Even if you're not my brother, even if you're my uncle, even if I never see you again, I'm trying. I hope you're happy. I hope you've built a life without people who use you. You always deserve that. Kyle, I read that email 3 times, searching for a catch, some hidden ask. There wasn't one. Just real regret, real growth. It didn't change anything. Didn't make me want to reach out. But it was something. Acknowledgement, growth. Maybe 31 would be the year Kyle finally grew up. I never replied. Didn't need to. We were done. Truth is, we'd never really been brothers. Just 2 people living in the same house, having totally different lives. He was the wanted kid. I was the obligation. No apology changes that. Still, I don't hate him. Don't wish him harm. I just don't need him in my life. I don't need anyone who only values me when I'm useful. Now, I've got a real life. William and I have dinner every Tuesday. He tells stories about Margaret, about their life, about giving me to Robert, about the regret that followed. She loved you so much, he says. She cried at night after you left. She'd say, that's my boy, our boy, and we gave him away. She never forgave herself. Never forgave me. Maybe that's why she left me the money, wrote it so clear in the will. She wanted to make sure I got something from her, something Robert couldn't take. Except he did. He took that too. I don't let William drown in guilt. Don't let him take on what Robert did. You told me the truth. I remind him when nobody else would, when I needed it most. That matters more than the money. More than anything, I'm seeing someone. Emma, she's a social worker, works with foster kids. She gets complicated families, gets what it's like to be adopted, to feel unwanted, to be used. We met at a fundraiser for the foundation. She asked about Margaret, and I told her everything about the adoption, about Kyle, about 8 years funding someone else's life, about the watch, about pulling the plug and watching it all fall apart. She didn't judge, didn't say I should have been more forgiving. She just looked at me and said, good for you for finally putting yourself first, for knowing you deserved better. That takes guts. We've been together 8 months. Asterisk slow, careful, I'm building something real now. Not a life based on what I can give, but on who I am. She's met William. listened to his stories, asked all these thoughtful questions about identity, about what it means to belong, about being someone's child. Blood doesn't make a family, she said over dinner. Choice does. William chose to tell you the truth, chose to give you what you needed to get free. That's more than Robert ever did. She's right. William is my father, not because of DNA, but because he stood by me when I needed him most, told me the truth when everyone else fed me lies, supported me when I decided to leave. That's what fathers are supposed to do. Robert never did. Last month, I went to Margaret's grave for the first time since she died. William came with me. We brought flowers, stood in front of the plain headstone. Margaret Morrison, beloved wife and mother, gone too soon. I said, "Hi, Margaret." Felt weird, honestly, calling her by her first name. Part of me wanted to say Mum, but it didn't feel right. She was my mother for 6 months, then she gave me away, then just watched from a distance while I was mistreated. William told me everything. The adoption, watching Robert and Linda break every promise, the money Margaret left me. I'm sorry they took it. Sorry you died thinking I'd get it, that I'd know you tried to help. The wind picked up, rustling the trees. William squeezed my shoulder. She knows, he said. Wherever she is, she knows. I touched the headstone cold granite. I told her I started a foundation in her name for kids like me. Kids who get treated differently because they're adopted. Kids who get used by their families. I'm making sure they get what you wanted for me. Protection, resources, someone to tell them they deserve better. I stood there talking to this woman I never really knew. She gave birth to me at 4, gave me away, thinking it was best, spent her whole life regretting it. I told her I forgive her for giving me up, for not fighting harder, for dying before she could tell me the truth. I forgive you, and I'm okay. More than okay. I'm free. William started crying. She'd be proud, he said. So proud of the man you've become, of the guts it took to walk away. Proud of the foundation, everything. You're exactly who she hoped you'd be. We left the cemetery and had lunch. William told more stories about Margaret's sense of humor, her kindness, how much she regretted the adoption. Every birthday, he said, she'd bake a cake for me, put my name on it, sing happy birthday alone in the kitchen, then throw the cake away. Did it for 38 years, right up until she died. Said it was the least she could do, just to acknowledge me, even if she couldn't celebrate with me. I thought about that. Margaret, baking cakes I never saw, singing to a kid who wasn't there, grieving every year for a choice she couldn't undo. I wish I'd known her, I said. William nodded. She wished that too, every day. But she believed giving me to Robert would be best. Thought he'd love me. Thought Linda would be a mother. Thought I'd have a better life with younger parents. She was wrong, but she didn't know until it was too late. Once the adoption was final, I was theirs, and all she could do was watch, hope, bake birthday cakes for a grandson she never got to know. I reached across the table, took William's hand. I'm glad you told me. Glad I know where I come from, who I come from. It doesn't change what happened, but it makes sense of everything that never made sense. Thank you. Kyle works at Target now. I saw him there a few weeks back. I was picking something up, turned a corner, and there he was. Red polo, name tag, stacking shelves. He spotted me, froze. We just stared at each other. To people who grew up in the same house, shared a grandfather, raised his brothers, but really uncle and nephew. "Hi, Nathan," he said, quiet, unsure. I nodded. "Kyle," awkward pause. Then he asked how I was. I shrugged. "Good, you." He gestured at his uniform. "Living the dream, retell." He tried to joke, but honestly, he looked older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. Like he'd finally hit reality, and it wore him down. I told him I got his email. "I know you didn't write back. I didn't expect you to. Just wanted you to know I meant it. The apology, I'm sorry for everything." He nodded. "I know." We stood there, not sure what else to say. His manager called him over. "Take care, Nathan," he said before leaving. I watched him walk away, my nephew, the one I supported for 8 years, who threw my gift on the ground, who lost everything when I finally said no. I didn't feel triumphant, didn't feel vindicated, just felt done, like I'd closed that chapter and was on to a new story. That was enough. Robert and Linda sent a Christmas card to my office last year. They don't have my home address anymore. A generic card, wishing you peace and joy, signed from both of them. No word about the lawsuit. Nothing about Kyle. Not a single mention of 38 years of lies. Just peace and joy, like we were some distant cousins who'd drifted apart. I tossed it in the trash. Emma asked if I wanted to reply. I just shook my head. No, they're not my family. I told her they're people I used to know, people I'm honestly better off without. Answering them would only crack open doors I've worked hard to shut. I'm finished with doors that go nowhere. She got it, didn't argue. She just squeezed my hand and said, "You're building something better, something real. That's what matters." And she's right. I am building something better. A life with William, with Emma, with the people who choose me because they want to, not because they expect anything from me. That's what real family looks like. Not the folks who raised me while resenting every minute. Not the nephew I paid for all those years. Not the stories and lies about who I was supposed to be. Family is the people who show up, who tell the truth, who see me for who I am, not for what I can give them. That's what I have now, and honestly, it's worth way more than everything I ever let go. Thanks for walking this road with me. Before you head out, I've left 2 more stories right here on your screen, both from men who learned that family isn't always the people you're born to, but the ones who stand by you when the truth finally comes out. Click on whichever one feels right, and if you want to join a community that actually gets what it's like to be the outsider, hit that notification bell. Until tomorrow, just remember, your story matters, even if they try to wipe it away.